Is it working? I do believe things are working. Alright, alright, alright. Okay, alright, sorry. I think we're okay, so, yeah, let's get started. Terribly sorry for the late start. Time kind of got away from me there, just had a little issue in the house that I had to take care of. It came up at the very last minute there, because I was like, oh yeah, I gotta do this before I do the stream, and it led to, a bit of a disaster. Anyways, doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Shut up, Mobius. Anyways, tonight it's going to be a bit of a short stream, because, oh, well, there's a couple factors, but the big one is I am freaking exhausted and my brain is kind of fried today. Between work and I got practically no sleep last night. I don't think I'll be able to stick around and play for a while stream. So, part 2 of playing the Newtonians will be later this week. I think I'll just do it on Friday, or possibly even on the weekend, if I decide to do something else on Friday. But anyways, so those of you watching live, thanks for coming by. Those of you watching on YouTube, I usually forget to say this at the beginning and say it at the end. I'll say it now. If you'd like to see more Stellaris Console content, feel free to check out my other playlists, my other videos. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications, and check out the links in the description for things like my Discord channel, where you can come by and talk with other Stellaris Console players, or talk about other stuff that I've played, or just whatever you're interested in. It's largely a Discord for talking about my own YouTube channel and people who like all my stuff. But you can come talk with other people who also play Stellaris Console Edition, maybe set up some multiplayer games, maybe bounce ideas off each other, whatever. You can also find the links to my Twitter and my Twitch channel, which I streamed this off of prior to uploading to YouTube. So links are in the description. I put those in every video I upload these days. Okay, so with that garbage out of the way, today I'm gonna do something not necessarily a little different, but we're going to do something I haven't done in a little bit here. Just got a message from the Decker King. I'll get to that in just a minute. I don't know if you're watching right now, buddy. We'll get to that in just a second. So rather than actually play this game with the Newtonians, we're going to talk about I'm going to talk about one of the big new changes or new additions with the Utopia update, and that is Ascension Perks, and why they are such, in my opinion, such a game changer, why they're so important, and how they kind of impact what you want to do in the game. And I'm also going to go through all of them. As far as I can tell, there's 19 in the game. It's only showing 18 here out of my unpicked ones, because number 19 is the one that I picked in the last bit of the stream. With starting the Newtonians. So we're going to talk about that. So again, this is completely unscripted, as is a lot of my stuff. A lot of it's going to be my opinion as well, which I generated on my own through some gameplay, but also studying stuff, looking up what other people feel about certain things. This is kind of some stuff that is a little difficult to find for back in the day when Utopia first came out on PC in 1.6 or 1.7 or whatever, and have people, give us some insight into how they thought about things like Ascension Perks from back then. You can easily find some stuff in more recent videos from the likes of possibly, well, actually, I know A-Spec, because I've watched an Ascension Perks video from him just a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact. But you'd probably have to look for other ones, possibly from Horath Drak or Stefan Anon, just name dropping other PC Stellaris players who have a lot more experience than myself. But, kind of going off of something that they said that I've not really considered, as well as a lot of it mostly being my own opinion. So before we get into looking at the actual Ascension perks, I will admit that before the Utopia update, I never really considered Unity, or I should say Unity generation, a big deal. And the reasoning for that is the traditions themselves, while they are nice bonuses to get, they weren't necessarily as impactful as a single Ascension perk can be. For example, the bonus you get from, let's just say, finishing the Supremacy Tree. Bonus to fire rate by 15%. Well, that's pretty decent. It's not bad by any means. Every bonus is good. Even the bonus from adopting it of getting 20% increased border range isn't too bad. The reason why I didn't think that they were as big a deal as they are now is because a lot of these little bonuses, they're not really that great individually. It was the additional collective of all of these bonuses together that really made them decent. The issue was, however, if before Utopia on Console Edition, if you stacked up your Unity generation, so say you built a society, or I should say, what's it called? A species similar to these Newtonians, where they are fanatic pacifists. They have civics like agrarian idle and inward perfection and that kind of stuff. And you're also using, oh, I don't have one here. You're also using the likes of, say, the artisan troupe, and having festivals on your worlds and buying art pieces from them, and you're learning, and you're quickly getting to traditions that give you things that produce extra Unity, like Paradise Dome buildings, or even visitor center buildings. And you're also, going to generate more Unity from neighboring rivals in the Supremacy Tree, etc., 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 etc. Getting Unity from energy grids and energy nexus. Blah, blah, blah. All that stuff. Getting all that extra Unity generation, it had a finite use in the game. If you actually built your entire empire around rushing these as quickly as possible, there was a finite amount of usefulness to that particular empire build, because once you were done all the traditions, boom, that's it. There is no other use for high Unity generation after completing all these, or at least there wasn't. And in my opinion, there still kind of isn't, but more on that later. Because Unity generation was strictly for completing these traditions, learning the traditions, and getting the little bonuses from completing said traditions and whatnot. And like I said, the bonuses, the individual bonuses themselves, they're not that great. Like leader skill levels increased by 1. That's okay. It's better when you stack it or combine it with other stuff. But the entire discovery tree in general, by completing it, you get minus 33% research station build cost, so they cost only 60 minerals. Your anomaly fail risk is reduced, and the discovery chances drastically increased. You get research points when your science ships are surveying. Your scientists are cheaper to recruit. They start with 1 higher skill level, and using science ships to assist research on planets not only increases the research output of that planet, but now it increases planetary happiness, which can further increase things like research generation and generation of all other resources that are being produced on that planet. And all that completed, you also get plus 10% research speed. All those little things together, added up in one big group, it's pretty decent. It covers a wide range of different little areas that can overall improve a specific aspect of how you're playing the game. Like how I often do. If you're playing very rush tech heavy and you play very materialist like I do, where you want to be generating high amounts of research all the time from start to finish, get a big leg up on or even just a small leg up on your opponents, even in the earlier mid games, by teching up faster than them. Well, completing the discovery tree didn't so much guarantee that from happening. It was just kind of an extra way of flavoring up your empire and fine tuning how you want to go about playing it. And of course, there was the one thing I suggested with the enhanced leaders empire build, where you adopt a tradition to get a specific tradition, in this case polytechnic education, to increase leader skills by 1, and then you get into the supremacy one to get war games to increase admiral skills by 2, and then you get into the domination one to increase governor skills by 2 and increase your governor leader capacity by 2. Little dinky things like that. Intentionally not completing traditions to pick specific things that better complement how you're playing your empire in order to further, improve on the playstyle you're going for, to further fine-tune how you are utilizing that empire. Well, the Ascension perks kind of throw that out the window. Not specifically throw it out the window, but they greatly encourage you to focus on strictly completing a single tradition now, not just because of all the little perks and bonuses you get from completing that tradition, but also from getting an even bigger bonus that you can simply pick from. And in this case, with the Newtonians empire that we created in the last stream and started playing, I went with one vision, which further increases the unity output of this empire, because that's what we're going for. We're going for lots of unity output. That's why we built it with fanatic pacifism and the inward perfection governing civic. So I'm not really sure if that's made much sense, but it's kind of changed the focus from, okay, I need these little improvements, which are kind of all over the map in the traditions. It's now more along the lines of, okay, which traditions do I want to finish to help give me a boost for this particular empire that I'm playing in the early stages of the game, as well as allow me access to an Ascension perk that can further complement my empire, or just give me a really big boost that I could really use. So it kind of changes the focus in that, and I think that's pretty cool, because I lean more towards, you start a tradition, you finish it, because the big bonus in pretty much all of the tradition trees is largely their finisher effects. That fire rate bonus for finishing supremacy, it's not huge, but it's pretty decent. The expansion bonus, finishing off traditions, you can increase your core sector systems by 2. Pretty decent. Some of them not so much, like Harmony, reducing consumer goods by 15%. And then adopting all diplomacy traditions increases our trust cap by +50. Not really that huge. Not really those big of game changers. Sometimes it'll be more like the starting effect, increasing happiness of all pops by +10%. Pretty good. Finishing prosperity, pretty good. Reducing terraforming cost. Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent here a little bit. I apologize. Finishing discovery, research speed +10%. You get the idea. And then, of course, now you get, in this case, you get a pretty decent finisher effect. You finish discovery tree, increase your research speed by +10%. Well, now you can also get an Ascension perk and do something such as where the hell is it? There we go, Technological Ascendancy. You take the Technological Ascendancy Ascension perk, gives you another +10% research speed bonus. Well, in finishing the discovery tree, you can technically now get a +20% research speed bonus. So the bonus for finishing the discovery tree is just now that much greater. Instead of increasing your research speed by 1/10 of what it was previously, it's now 1/5. So I mean that's pretty significant. Finishing the finishing the supremacy tree, and then you pick something else like what was it? Interstellar Dominion. That's what it is. Further increasing your border range by +25%. Well, you also got the adoption effect with the supremacy tree, which increased your border range by 20%. Well, now you're getting 45% increased border range just from completing the supremacy tree, plus all the other bonuses like the fire rate bonus and other things like army damage and increased ship build speed and naval capacity, so on and so forth. Yeah, I really think it's kind of fundamentally changed how useful Unity generation now is in the game. It was always moderately useful, but it still had a kind of finite. Once you get all 8 traditions, then that's it. Now it's a case of once you get all 8 traditions and you can unlock your Ascension perks, that's where some big bonuses really come in. Now, I understand that in the PC version, once you pick all 8 of your Ascension perks in the game by completing all the traditions, I'm not sure if this is the case here in Console Edition right now. I have a feeling that this doesn't happen until a fair bit later. But in the current version on PC, you can continue to use that Unity generation to still unlock perks, but they're temporary. They're very powerful and very expensive and very temporary. Like somebody told me that you can enact. Sorry, it's not so much a perk, it's more like an edict, like a planetary edict. You can enact, or an empire edict. You can enact an edict that only lasts 1 year, but it increases, say, resource output on a planet by like an additional 50% for all resources, or something crazy like that. I can't remember specifically what was said, because this conversation was a few months ago. But there is a use for further Unity generation down the road. After adopting all your traditions and completing all your Ascension perks. As it stands now, I do believe that once you get all 8 Ascension perks, or once you complete all 8 traditions and unlock all 8 Ascension perks, you can pretty much trade in any buildings that are strictly for Unity generation, like the Hypercom's forums, or I should say the monuments, anything that you bought from the artisan troops that gave you like art pieces, or a ministry of what the heck is it? Not Ministry of Benevolence, Ministry of Art or something that you can build. I do believe you can largely dismantle them, replace them with something else that's more useful, like a mining network or something. But it is entirely possible to get 8 Ascension perks before completing all 8 traditions, because there is at least one technology that you can research, which essentially unlocks an Ascension perk for you. I've gotten it myself a couple times. It's usually shown up in the physics tree, and it's I believe it's called like Ascension Mastery or something like that. And all it is it gives you a free Ascension perk, a free open Ascension perk, I should say. You don't even have to finish a tradition for it or anything like that, so it's pretty useful to get that. So yeah, so to shorten what I've been babbling about for nearly the last 20 minutes is completing the traditions is now a much bigger, I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, priority now than it used to be. It'll definitely require more micromanaging. You shouldn't, I don't really recommend constantly playing as empires that focus on Unity generation, because you can still give those empires bonuses in other areas that could be more useful beyond just rushing Ascension perks. But definitely building an empire like this one with the Newtonians, where we are intentionally rushing for Ascension perks. Well, the Ascension perks can give you a really, really big early game bonus, or I should say early game lead, because a lot of them are individually quite powerful. So with that being said, I hope I kind of got my point across. If it didn't make much sense, please tell me in the comments below. Like I said, completely unscripted, so sometimes I don't quite, I got the idea in my brain, but I don't quite convey what exactly that idea is. I should take up online courses for public speaking, shouldn't I? Anyways, blah blah blah. Let's we're gonna load a random game now. We're gonna go through all of the Ascension perks. I do believe I've done this previously, but this time we're gonna do similar to what I have done in the past, and kind of give what I feel is a good Ascension perk and a bad Ascension perk, so on. And again, this is mostly my opinion. Ooh, excuse me. Bad time to get the hiccups. I forget how small the 150-star galaxies really are. Anyways, so yeah, like I said, this is largely going to be my opinion, and feel free to agree or disagree, because the truth is that there's almost no bad ones. Almost no straight up bad ones, or at least, again, in my opinion. But I mean, that's part of the reason I like this game. A lot of that kind of stuff is pretty subjective, and can change. So yeah, let's just go top to bottom. We'll go from top to bottom, left to right. Starting off with Interstellar Dominion, border range plus 25%. I'd say this one's pretty good in the right situations. So I'm going to classify it as pretty good, but it can be made better if you combine it with things like, there is, what's that civic? I believe it's nationalistic zeal that increases your border range by a further, 15%? You can combine it with being a xenophobe or a fanatic xenophobe, both of which also increase your border range by a decent amount. I believe 15% for xenophobe and 30% for fanatic xenophobe. And then, of course, the nationalistic zeal increase the border range even further, plus Interstellar Dominion Ascension perk. You can get, what is it? I believe plus 70, plus 80% on extra border range for not really doing anything, and that's not even including the Galactic Ambitions Society research in the research tree, which increases your borders another plus 20%. So, you know, stacking this up, you could get a lot of border range, which can be quite strong. It means that, you know, for example, a single planet covers a very wide area. A single frontier post covers a pretty decent sized area, allowing you to essentially gain control and be able to harness the production available in star systems from resources by building, you know, research stations, mining stations, and the like. So this can be pretty decent. It's also pretty useful, I would say, more so if you are building tall as opposed to wide. If you are keeping your colonized systems pretty low, and you know, you don't have a huge amount of influence generation, so you can only you're very restricted in how many frontier outposts you can in fact build. Interstellar Dominion is actually pretty decent. I don't think it's as useful if you are building wide. In other words, you're early on colonizing a lot of planets really early, and even starting up sectors by the time you're 50 years into the game. I don't think it's as useful in that instance, because by playing wide, by colonizing a lot of planets, well, the planets themselves are extending your borders quite a decent amount. So I don't necessarily think it's as necessary to do that. Plus, when playing wide, it's a lot more difficult to maintain positive energy generation, because colonizing planets really uses up energy generation quite a bit. What is it, like -8 per world, something like that. Let's move on. Technological Ascendancy. This is a very safe pick at almost no matter how you're playing, just about. Research speed plus 10%. A good bonus for most any empire. It's a decent pick, even if you're not focusing on teching up, but it is far more prominent when you are playing, you know, materialist, fanatic materialist, and stacking up research generation. This tacks on quite nicely with it. As I said, completing the research traditions, or sorry, the discovery traditions, wow, can essentially, you know, increase your research speed by plus 20%, because it's like, okay, once I finish discovery, I get technological ascendancy because I'm playing fanatic materialists, where my main species also generates extra science, and because they're intelligent and they're also like natural engineers or something like that. Technological ascendancy, it's a good pick. It's a safe pick too. One vision, governing ethics attraction plus 30%, unity output plus 10%. I'd say this one is kind of on the lower end of the spectrum. Unity output plus 10%, that's not a huge bonus. And if I recall right, it's specifically, it's not plus 10% of your overall generation. I believe it's plus 10% per building. Why don't we just quit out of this random game really quick and just double check that. I'm going to load my Iron Man game to confirm that. I don't want to stay in it because it reorganizes all the Ascension perks and kind of F's things up a little bit for how I want to go about it. No, not music player, you dink. Where are we? Let's find any random world. Pretty sure I have a Paradise Dome somewhere. Oh, here we go. Ministry of Culture. This is a good example. So yeah, here's a good example. This tile is generating 9.72 Unity. Because it's got a lot of bonuses, as you can see. Hypercom's Forum, Happiness, my ruler, Patron of the Arts from paying money to the Artisan Troupe, Auto Curating Vault, and Ministry of Culture. However, we go and take a look here. The Empire modifier, monthly Unity plus 10%. So it is applied pretty much across your empire. So it's not on a per building basis. So I was wrong. I'm okay to admit that I was wrong in that instance. My bad. So yeah, like one vision. It's still an okay pick, especially if you are going for, as I said earlier, rushing Unity, for example, or just trying to maintain a really good collection of Unity. Did I save? No, I didn't. Oh, of course not. Boop. There we go. It's good to stack on with other things like buildings or whatever you want to call them, if you are in fact doing what we're doing with the Newtonians and trying to rush Unity and stack up some Ascension perks early on. All in all, though, it's kind of on the lower end of the usefulness spectrum. I would say it's extremely situational. The governing ethics attraction, big deal, plus 30%. Good if you actually if you don't want to change your governing ethics. Or want to greatly reduce the chance that they will change. But as I've discussed in previous videos, the trait, for example, conformists, that increases governing ethics attraction, isn't terribly good because throughout the game you do want to be changing your governing ethics at least once. Definitely. So more situational, not really great, not really bad either. Let's see here. What happened? I don't think I've seen this one. Hang on a second. Okay, so apparently I'm a liar. I was kind of worried that this would happen. There are 20 Ascension perks. This one I've not seen before. Consecrated worlds. The galaxy is home to many holy places, some more obvious than others. As mortals, we will struggle to divine true nature of the universe. This unlocks an edict, Consecrate World. This is a planetary edict that lasts for 100 years and increases pop happiness, growth speed, and boosts Unity generation. I do believe this is only available to spiritualist empires, and that's why I've not seen it before, because I rarely play as spiritualists, which is interesting. I thought you'd think I would have seen it playing as the Newtonians. But yeah, this one's actually quite strong. A planetary edict that lasts for 100 years is pretty good. But the big thing is that the pop happiness and the growth speed and the Unity generation, they all combine together quite nicely. And the Unity generation, again, combines with being, or I should say, having spiritualist ethics, because being partly spiritualist increases Unity generation by default. So this is actually a pretty strong pick. It can possibly put a drain on your influence. Let's take a look-see here. Purity laws? Nope, that's not it. This fanatic xenophobe edict and blah 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 blah. Hang on a second. Where is the? There it is. No. Oh yeah, we have to get the friggin' perk first. Man. See what lack of sleep does to me? I'm not thinking straight. Anyways, like I was saying, is pretty decently strong, especially if you are less focused on actually trying to get into conflicts with other people, and you really want to build up both production on your planets as well as increase the growth of newer colonies and whatnot. Mastery of Nature. Clear blocker cost minus 100% unlocks the ability to clear most tile blockers. This one's pretty good. I'm not going to say it's as situational as, say, One Vision, because this one's pretty useful all across the board, but it's more useful in certain situations. If you have like a really high, say you cranked up the habitable worlds modifier to ×5, as I've done sometimes just for funsies, and there's lots of habitable worlds around your home system, but a lot of them are small and have a bunch of tile blockers on them. Well, Mastery of Nature can be extremely useful in that instance if you do in fact plan to colonize lots of those little planets, especially if you're playing wide and plan to colonize a lot of planets throughout pretty much all of the early and the mid game. If you're surrounded by nothing but large planets, especially when they don't have a lot of tile blockers on them, it's a lot less useful, because when smaller planets are taken up by tile blockers, it's a much bigger percentage of their potential production that is being, prevented from even a single tile blocker. Say a 12 tile world has 3 tile blockers on it. Well, that's 25% of the planet's possible production. It's 3 out of 12. It's a quarter of it. So a quarter of that planet's possible output is now blocked by tile blockers. And if you have that on a lot of planets, the Mastery of Nature is very useful. If you have, a couple planets that are, more like 20 to 25 tiles, and each of them has, say, we'll say at most like 4, that's still about a quarter of, say, a 20 tile planet. But you still have 16 other tiles to work with as opposed to just 9. So it's not nearly as important to use this Ascension perk to clear those tiles and whatnot. It does reduce the need to study those society research projects where you can learn how to clear those tile blockers. So if you're looking to beeline much better down the society tech tree, and at the same time you're playing wide and have colonized a lot of planets early on, it can have a weird niche use for doing that kind of thing, in that you don't have to spend any time whatsoever researching a lot of those tile blocker clearance projects. But it's, like I said, it's more useful if you're colonizing lots of planets, especially smaller ones, and ones that have smaller sizes. Imperial Prerogative, Core Sector Systems +5. This looks like it could be good, but it's not as good as you might think. I would say that this one is just about bottom of the totem pole. 5 Core Sector Systems, I mean, whatever. If you're quickly expanding and having too many Core Sector Systems constantly, well, you should be using sectors. You should be just making sectors out of that stuff. I mean, adding 5 core sector systems on top of having, like, what can you have by the mid game? You could have like 7, so having 12 core sector systems by, 50, 75 years in the game doesn't really, it's just not as strong as you might think. Engineered Evolution. This gives your starting species, excuse me, my brain is starting to really shut down, +2 trait points, and the modify species special project cost is reduced by 50%. This gives you the tech research option, gene seed purification. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure what that does. This requires at least one specific societal research project, and it can be no sooner than your second Ascension perk pick. It's all right. This takes you down the evolutionary mastery, ascension path, which the next one is, of course, called evolutionary mastery. And it's all right. It's a lot better if you're really good at micromanaging your planets, because you could specifically tailor the traits of an entire planet, or even an entire system of planets, to be good at, you know, one or two different things. Then you use those planets for production of one or two specific kinds of resource generation. Say you make an entire star system into mining colonies and whatnot. Well, this could give you the opportunity to remove negative traits that, you know, are negatively impacting mining production, or negatively impacting like things like happiness or whatever you choose, and then you modify all the pops in that system to be good at generating minerals. You know, say you give them the industrial trait and whatnot, you give them a communal trait to make them happier as well, and all that jazz. You know, you can start the process of doing that, and then evolutionary mastery just further plays on that. This completes the biological ascension mastery. Gives you some more tech research options regarding tailoring your species to the specific needs of your empire. Evolutionary mastery +3 trait points, so even one more than engineered evolution, and further reduces the modify species special project by another 25%, which is pretty significant. If, as I said, you're going through on an empire-wide scale and custom tailoring your entire species to do specific things, what you need them to specifically do. I don't think it's the best of the ascension paths to go down. It's definitely an interesting thing to pick. It's still not bad. It's still not a bad ascension path to go down. The flesh is weak. This starts the machine ascension path. I haven't actually done it myself yet, but I would say this would be my go-to default choice, going towards converting my starting species into synthetics. Your robot maintenance cost is reduced by another 15%. Your robot build speed increases +25%. It does require the droids technology, and you need at least one other Ascension perk. So if you have droids researched, this can be no sooner than your second Ascension perk. This one is quite... it's bleh at the very beginning, aside from the robot build speed increase, because there is no other way to increase robot build speed in the game right now, aside from the flesh is weak and synthetic evolution. It also reduces your robot maintenance cost, which combines with the reduced robot maintenance cost from being materialist or fanatic materialist. There's again few things in the game that reduce that maintenance cost. This is one of them. But like I said, on its own, these bonuses, not that big of a deal. It's not until you get to the synthetic evolution that it is a big deal. And you have to pick the flesh is weak to get synthetic evolution. This essentially puts your brains in a jar and turns everybody into robots. Further reduces robot maintenance cost by another -25%. So again, stacks really well with being materialist. And robot build speed, another +25%. So a total of 50% extra robot build speed. This requires the synthetics technology, the synthetic personality matrix, the flesh is weak ascension perk, and you have to have at least 3 other ascension perks. So the flesh is weak plus 2 other ascension perks, and then you can get synthetic evolution. Essentially turns your entire empire into synthetics, which have really good bonuses to production across the board. They generate extra energy, they generate extra minerals, they generate extra science. Pretty much the only thing they don't generate extra of is, I believe, food. But for the most part, I've found that changing over my empire to a lot of synthetic pops and not leaving very many biological pops, the synthetics still generate more stuff, no matter what it is, because they also tend to be a lot happier, unless they're in a very unhappy faction, which I've found doesn't happen too much. Mind over matter. This starts you down the psionic ascension path. I'd say this one is the more unique of the 3 Ascension paths, and since I haven't exactly done it myself, I'm not 100% sure what it does. You need the psionic theory technology, and it unlocks the tech research option of telepathy, and you need at least one other Ascension perk to be able to pick mind over matter. And it leads to Transcendence, which requires 3 other Ascension perks plus Mind Over Matter. So it can be no earlier than your 4th Ascension perk pick, and you need Mind Over Matter prior to it. Both of these unlock the ability to research psionic technologies. And I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure what all the psionic technologies encompass. Different things like combat computers, I believe, to increase things like tracking or evasion or just, you know, strange stuff like that, like psionic shielding for your ships, and you know, so on and so forth. Like I said, I'd say it's the most interesting of the picks, and my recommendation is simply give it a shot yourself. See what it does for you, and if you like it, great. Get it often. I do know a lot of the psionic technologies are superior to the highest tier technologies you can get in the basic game, or in the basic research trees. I guess I should say it, but I'll admit as of right now, my knowledge of what exactly those technologies entail is somewhat limited. I do apologize for not doing further research on that in the future, but at the same time, you know, why completely spoil everything as well? Part of the fun of Stellaris is discovering stuff for yourself. World Shaper, terraforming speed plus 100%, and this gives you the atmospheric manipulation technology. This is quite powerful if you play tall and do a lot of terraforming, because editing, for lack of a better term, editing planets to better suit your home species needs is quite strong, and especially so if you frequently terraform Gaia worlds. This requires the terrestrial sculpting technology, or terrestrial sculpting, technology, and it can be your first Ascension perk slot. Terrestrial sculpting is pretty early on in the society tech tree, so you could get this as your first Ascension perk fairly easily, and it gives you the free atmospheric manipulation, which is normally further down the terraforming society research tree. So it's a free technology upgrade, and the terraforming speed is essentially doubled. So terraforming planets greatly reduced. Nothing wrong with that. You don't want to just pick it if you almost never terraform in a certain playthrough. But if you're starting a new playthrough and you're like, okay, this gameplay, I'm actually going to terraform lots of planets, and I'm going to terraform often, so I'm going to crank up my energy production as early as possible so I can start terraforming. This is actually quite strong. Galactic Force Projection, naval capacity plus 200. Right now, this is really good, insanely good. It'll be even better whenever Stellaris Console gets the Titan class of ship. Titans are essentially bigger than battleships, and in order to be able to construct a Titan, you first have to get your naval capacity up to at least 200. And every time your naval capacity hits a value of an additional 200, so 200 or 400 or 600, you can build another Titan. So once we get the ability to construct Titans, this is essentially a free Titan. Also, as of right now, it's really good overall, because wide empires, which already have quite good naval capacity, this just furthers it even more. It's essentially 25 battleships worth of naval capacity for free. It requires 2 other Ascension perks to be selected first, so this could be a good 3rd Ascension perk. Say you pick something like Technological Ascendancy, increase your research speed. Then your second pick is The Flesh is Weak, and then your third pick can be Galactic Force Projection, and then your fourth pick is Synthetic Evolution. Bam! You've done your Evolutionary Ascendancy pick, and you've got 2 really good bonuses. One of them on the more militaristic side of things, and one on the materialist side of things. It's a good pick overall. This is especially awesome if you're doing things like the one system challenge, where you can only colonize any planets in your home system if it has any, or you can only use your home system for colonies and habitats and the like. Defender of the Galaxy. This can be a third pick. Requires 2 other Ascension perks to be selected first. Damage to all endgame crises factions is increased by 50%, and the opinion of every other AI empire in the galaxy is increased by +20, which is okay. Not fantastic, but it's okay. If you are already able to fend off endgame crises without too much trouble, this isn't really a necessary pick. If you are like just barely squeaking through, or even worse, you're backed into a corner, then this is a much more pertinent pick, because it'll just give you a very significant edge against fighting those endgame crises, and it just gives you a hell of a lot better odds, for lack of a better phrase. The opinion modifier isn't that huge of a deal, but it's a lot better if you are leaning towards a more kind of diplomatic approach to your win condition. Say you're trying to get most everybody in the galaxy into a federation, and you have a couple empires that are kind of on the fence about even liking you very much. Well, you could pick this, increase their opinion, and then just gift them a bunch of minerals and energy credits. And then it's like, oh yeah, well, we like you even more, and that might be just the little nudge in the positive direction of opinion that you need to be able to invite them to your federation or form defensive pacts with them, whatever. Master Builders requires 1 other Ascension perk, requires the Voidborn or Galactic Wonders Ascension perk. So this could be your second Ascension perk if you get Voidborn, because you can't get Galactic Wonders as your first Ascension perk. Mega Structure build speed plus 100%. This is good if you plan to build mega structures, be they either Ring Worlds or any of the other ones, the Century Ray, Science Nexus, Dyson Sphere, doesn't matter. This is a good one. Plus 100% mega structure build speed. They already take forever to build, so any increase, or I should say any reduction in the time it is required to build them is good, because the mega structures give you massive bonuses, and they're just useful all around. Galactic Contender requires 2 other Ascension perks to be selected first, so this can be no sooner than your third one. Damage to a fallen and awakened empires plus 33%. If you plan on actually going after fallen and awakened empires, and you want to either destroy them or subjugate them or integrate them into your own empire, absolutely, this is a fantastic pick. 110%. If it's equally likely that you have a nearby fallen empire and they're being extremely annoying, constantly going to war with you because you put a frontier outpost too close to their borders and they really hate that, this drastically increases your effectiveness at defending yourself, or even going on the offensive. So not a bad pick. Useless if you are starting a game with 0 fallen empires, for obvious reasons. And I actually failed to mention that. Defender of the Galaxy, also useless if you turned off endgame crisis events, in case that wasn't obvious. Voidborn. This requires the Deep Space Installations technology, which is a fair ways into the engineering tech tree. Requires the battleships technology, again, a decent way into the engineering tech tree. But aside from those, if you have the technology, this could be your first Ascension perk. This unlocks the ability to construct habitats. So habitats right now, they're pretty strong. The buildings that you can construct on them, for the most part, they're better than most anything you could build on planets from the get-go. A couple of them aren't as good as a really high tier. Well, let's just do a direct comparison. The one that generates food on the habitat, isn't as good as, say, a hydroponics bay 4 or 5, for example. However, there's other ones like the science labs that you can build on habitats, and as well as definitely the what are they called? The power plants. Jeez, again, I apologize. My brain is really frazzled at the time of recording this. The science labs and the power plants are actually very, very useful on habitats. Each science lab on a habitat generates 3 points of each kind of research, so 3 physics, 3 society, and 3 engineering. The power plants generate 8 energy credits. The food bays, the hydroponics bays, and the mining networks only generate 4 food and minerals, respectively. And the leisure center, which is kind of like the habitat version of the monuments, like the heritage site and the hypercoms forum, it generates 4 unity. So, you know, the one that generates food, the one that generates minerals, and the one that generates unity, better than any of the starting buildings you can get on a planet, but the fully upgraded planetary structures are better than the ones you can get on a habitat. Still very useful to get habitats, especially if you are playing tall, colonizing not many planets, or say you put the habitable worlds modifier way down and there's not a lot of habitable planets near your home system. So, you know, this can be a really, really smart way to build a production within your empire. Again, you can also place some other buildings on habitats like paradise domes. So another way to increase like food production or unity production. You know, in general, habitats are very useful. People will feel differently about this one depending on how you like to play. If you don't really care for habitats, well then, and you almost never use them, well then, aside from, you know, trying it out for yourself, you might not see much use for this. But if you're more about a lot of micromanagement and you play like me as well, you build very tall most of the time, habitats can be extremely useful. So we're on the last 2, which are essentially for building megastructures. The first one is the Circle of Life. This unlocks the Ring World megastructure. It requires 3 other Ascension Perks, so it can be no sooner than your 4th pick. My throat's getting really dry from all the talking now. It requires the Voidborn Ascension Perk, so this one. And it requires the Mega Engineering Research Technology, which is way down in the tech tree. Ring worlds are very good. I'll simply come out and say it. They're insanely costly to get, because if I recall right, it's 10,000 minerals to build the initial construction site around at a star, and then it's 20,000 minerals to build the ring world frame, and then it's 20,000 minerals for each of the 4 sections, which act like a 25 tile Gaia world. However, if you have the production to meet those requirements, if you are able to, a ring world can be extremely useful, even just one, because as I said, it's a completed ring world is essentially 4 25 tile Gaia worlds, so 4 of the maximum planet size in Gaia worlds. Extremely useful. And the cool thing too is that they're not just blank tiles either. A lot of those tiles on each of the 4 sections will have, just like any planet, little bits of resources. You know, one tile could have +2 minerals, another could have +1 physics research, another one could have +1 energy credits on it. So each section can, you know, really help with additional resource generation across the board. Because this is still fairly new, I've only ever built 1 ring world. You might have seen it when we loaded that Zaxoan collective save. As a matter of fact, I'm actually specializing each ring world section for a specific type of resource generation. So one's going to do science, one's going to do energy credits, one's going to do minerals, and then the other one I haven't quite decided yet, but that's beside the point. So you can either do it that way, or you could do it where, you know, each ring world section, you build the respective building on those tiles depending on what resource is already there, and you just kind of roll from there. Any of the empty ones you just fill in with whatever else you need. Ring worlds, insanely useful. I can't stress it enough. They are really good. Probably, I would say that they are the most costly megastructure to build. I'm pretty sure they are the most costly megastructure to build, just in terms of the sheer amount of resources required up front to construct each section. Well, to construct the whole bloody thing, I should say. But I would also say it's the most useful because you can tailor it to your empire's specific needs. And then Galactic Wonders, in case this one wasn't obvious, again, it requires 3 other Ascension Perks, so it can be no earlier than your 4th one, and you have to have the Mega Engineering Technology. Getting Galactic Wonders lets you build the Sentry Array, the Science Nexus, and the Dyson Sphere. So the Sentry Array, as I've said in previous videos, gives you really wide sensor range, which simply increases in range as you complete higher stages of the Sentry Array until the Sentry Array is done, and you can essentially look into every system in the galaxy and check out what orbital stations are there, are there any spaceports, are there any colonized worlds, who's got it colonized, how many ships do they have in the area. It basically turns you into the galactic version of the NSA, and you can spy on everything that's going on, which is actually very powerful. You can check out army strengths on certain planets, I believe, and naval ship deployment, that kind of stuff. Very powerful. The Science Nexus, also quite powerful and much cheaper to build than, say, a ring world. Just one sec. Sorry about that. Dry throat syndrome. The Science Nexus, really good. It puts your technological advancement through the roof because a fully completed science... Well, I should say, each stage of the Science Nexus, aside from the very beginning where you just build a construction site, each stage of the Science Nexus increases the amount of research points across all 3 trees that it generates by another 30. So a stage 1 Science Nexus generates 30 physics, society, and engineering research. Then a stage 2 generates 60 of those 3 types of research. And then the final stage, which is stage 3, generates 90. And then that can be increased even further because an event can occur where somebody invents a technology where it's like, oh, we can further increase the research of the Science Nexus, but it requires sacrificing one of your scientists. And then that puts the total science output for all 3 trees up to 100 just from your one Science Nexus. So it's a lot of science generation off of a single structure, and can be built far faster than it would take to generate that much extra science generation across all 3 tech trees by building science labs on your planets, on your habitats, and on orbital research stations and whatnot. So really pushing the envelope for cranking out additional science generation. By the time you get the Science Nexus, you'll probably be in the late game, and you'll largely be using it for the repeatable techs later on to increase things like your ship shield strength, your ship hull hit points, the damage and fire rate of the specific weapon types that you're largely using, that kind of stuff. But it is a big boost in the amount of science generated. And lastly, the Dyson Sphere. Very useful. Again, like all the other megastructures, extremely useful. I would see this as the more difficult of the megastructures to build, not because of the upfront resource cost, but because of I can't wait to try it for myself to confirm this. When you first start building the Dyson Sphere, it causes a significant drain on your energy credits. Once you have it partially built and you get it completed, especially, it produces a crap ton of energy credits for you. But it's, if I recall right, it's that very first stage of the Dyson Sphere, or not really the first stage, but I would say it's the setting up the construction site, possibly, of that Dyson Sphere. It's a big drain on your energy credits, so you don't really see any productivity out of it until you get partway built through it at the very least. So it could be potentially more of a hindrance than a help, especially right away. So, you know, just be aware of that. You do need to be prepared for starting construction of a Dyson Sphere, not just with the upfront cost in resources, in particular minerals, but it's also a drain, a severe drain on your resource output for energy credits. And I do believe that's it. I totally forgot about the Consecrated Worlds Ascension perk, because remember when we first looked at it last week when the update dropped, it wasn't there. I do believe this is restricted to only spiritualist empires, but as I said, it's quite powerful, and I do apologize for forgetting about it and being surprised by it. If there's any other hidden Ascension perks that, you know, I know what it is or what they are and what they do and whatnot, but if there's any other ones that are actually in the game, they're just hidden for whatever reason, I do apologize for missing them. And again, the Mind Over Matter and Transcendence ones, which is the Psionic Ascension path, as to what exactly kind of technology it gives you and what exactly following this Ascension path does, I would simply say try it out for yourself. That would be the more fun thing to do, rather than listen to this douchebag from Canada just simply explain it to you without you being able to experience the joy of discovering something new all by yourself. That's my personal opinion. And that's also, I'm going to use that as my go-to excuse for not specifically researching exactly what all the psionic technologies are and getting these Ascension perks will do for you. But I do feel that is a large part of the fun of Stellaris. It's partially why I've tried to avoid spoiling things. So, like, you know, it's entirely possible that some people have not made it, you know, newer players in particular, have not made it to the end game and encountered an end game crisis, so they don't know what Prothoran creatures or Unbidden or Aberrant or Vehement or AI rebels are. I don't want to spoil anything. I try to reduce that kind of Christ, I'm really losing my brain here. I try to reduce the amount of you know, excitement and fun that can be generated from that kind of stuff just going on unexpectedly and you experiencing it for yourself for like the first time or the third time or whatever, and just being like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't necessarily want to ruin that for other people by, you know, revealing exactly what those things are and what the events are. Anyways, enough babbling. So it's been just a little over an hour. I'm going to end the stream here. Again, I really apologize for being late. Initially I hadn't counted on tonight being a short stream, but I thought, you know what, I think it's better if I actually do talk about the Ascension Perks, which is, I think the big feature add-on with the Utopia update for Stellaris Console Edition. Anyways, yeah, that'll sum it up for my rambling. If you've survived this far without wanting to commit suicide, I greatly applaud you. As I said, I can go off on tangents quite regularly with these unscripted talks and whatnot. And I've said this a couple times already, but I can't seem to reiterate enough. A lot of the stuff that I went over is largely based on my opinion, which I form for myself. But I also factor in other people's insight and thoughts that I have, that, you know, things that I quite possibly might not have considered in the past as well. And the big thing is that a lot of the stuff that we just looked at is still subject to change. I can tell you that one Ascension perk in particular flat out gets changed sometime down the road, and I believe, what is it called? Galactic Force Projection, the one that gives you plus 200 naval capacity, that gets outright changed, or has been outright changed on the PC version, and it's not anywhere near the same beneficial effect. So if this is like 6 years down the road and we've gotten, or not 6 years, holy crap, if this is 6 months down the road and we've already gotten, say, I don't know, like Synthetic Dawn and Apocalypse by this point, and stuff has changed by now, you know, well, got to take in mind that this was uploaded in August of 2019, so this might be a little bit outdated by the same time next year. Anyways, that'll sum it up for this stream. I should be back Friday. I don't know if I want to try to stream some No Man's Sky again. There's been some hot fixes out for No Man's Sky since the last update, as I encountered some bugs attempting to stream it myself. But the game crashed on me 3 times in about 20 minutes. I was kind of sad. But some hot fixes and patches have been out since then. So that's a possibility. I would also very much like to continue the Newtonian game, because we just made it last week and I really wanted to play it again tonight. But as I said, I kind of pseudo last minute changed my mind, and a big reason for that is my brain's fried right now from my complete lack of sleep. As I said before, if you came by and watched this live, cool, thanks for coming by, greatly appreciate it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, again, check the links in the description. There's a link to my Discord channel to talk about either other stuff I've done or talk with other Stellaris console players. It's pretty barren in there right now. I'm going to forewarn you that at the time of recording and uploading this, it's extremely small. There's, I think, only 4 of us in there, including myself, which is kind of sad now that I mention it. But, you know, if you want to help populate that Discord channel, check the link in the description. Also, follow me on Twitter for news and updates about upcoming stuff, or when I alert you that I'm going live. And, of course, the link to my Twitch channel is also in the description if you do want to come by and watch one of my streams, where Tuesday night has largely become Stellaris Console Edition night. And I love playing this game, and I really enjoy streaming things about it. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Mobius Y, a very, very, very mentally exhausted and somewhat sleepy Mobius Y, on Tuesday, August 20th. It's 8:30 right now. It's a good time to go to bed. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great evening. And, yeah.